moments I learned from the game between Chelsea and Wolf yesterday. There were a lot of things that happened in that game, but these are the 4 important key moments we need to look at and say, yes, this is really important. And number 1 is Wolf came to Stamford Bridge to face Chelsea with a plan. And their planning was to sit back and eat Chelsea on a counter attack. And they did that very well, especially in the first half. And in many occasions, they eat Chelsea on counter attack, but they were unfortunate, to score from it, probably because they are not brilliant enough. So I think when you are looking at that Wolf, it is very difficult for the opposition manager to read them, because especially when you are playing against a team that doesn't have a manager, they have a temporary coach or manager right now, and you don't know how they are going to play. You don't know their plan, especially a team that sits, below, they sit in 20 position on the table. This season they have not won any match. They just draw 2 and lost all their games. They are very dangerous because you don't know what they are going to do. But the only thing Enzo Maresca have in his mind is that since he has played them in the Carabao Cup, so they are still going to play similarly to how they used to play. So that was the plan in Enzo Maresca, and I think it was very difficult in first half. So, and because Wolf had a plan and they execute the plan very well in the first half. So they sit back and their plan is on a counter attack. So I think I give Wolf the credit for what they did in that first half against Chelsea, honestly. And number 2 key moments I learned from the game against Wolf yesterday. Chelsea were poor in the first half. Honestly speaking, even me, I was angry. I was annoyed the way Chelsea were playing, because they were not moving the ball faster. When you are playing against a low block team, where we say they plan to sit back, you need to move the ball faster than usual. Chelsea were just putting the ball side by side, passing back, side, right side, left side. There was no player on the pitch that could take risk, especially the wingers. The wingers we put on the pitch, Chelsea put on the pitch, they were not good in one-on-one. And if you want to play against a low block, you have to be, you have to good at taking on players, especially the wingers. So Neto and Garnacho, they are not good in taking one-on-one, and that was so annoying. Yesterday, the plan of Wolf was sit back and you need to take risk, move the ball faster before they settle back behind the ball. But Chelsea were not doing it, and in the first half it was 0-0. So I think that was the second key moment in that game against Wolf yesterday. And the third key important moment we learned from the game between Chelsea and Wolf yesterday was in the second half. Wolf came out to play Chelsea, and I was shaking my head. They came out to play Chelsea. I don't know what give them that lever. Say, we want to come out and play you. We want to score. There's no amount of good players you have in your team. Once you come out to play Chelsea, then be expecting to eat goals, to shop goals. But they made a mistake by saying they want to come out and play. They will have stick to their plan. Like we will sit back from 1 minute to the end. So maybe it could have difficult for Chelsea to score, because if they stick with their first half plan in the second half, it could have been more difficult for Chelsea. But the only mistake they did was coming out to play Chelsea. So when they came out, they shot for the first goal, and that was the change of the game. Chelsea capitalized on that, and they were punished for that. That was the third important key moment in the game yesterday. And finally, the fourth important key moment I learned from the game was Estevao. I understand Estevao play like 90 minutes against Karabakh in the Champions League, and that game was, the intensity in that game was high. So for me personally, Gongon, I don't expect Enzo Maresca to start him yesterday because of the age, 18 years, and Enzo Maresca is trying to manage him right now. So when he came into that second half, the game changed, and what Neto or Garnacho couldn't do in the first half or before Estevao came. Estevao came in around 64 minutes, and he made an assist in 65 minutes, and it resulted into a goal. You know, he was able to take on players. His willingness to take on players were there. We can see that was the difference between Estevao and our wingers. So Estevao change everything. You know, he opened up the game, and we were able to capitalize, counter on that. You know, to score 3 pass, 2 more pass. Wolverhampton. So I understand to play Wolf is a bonus, right? So, but you know, everybody has been beating them, so it would be a shame to Chelsea not to beat them. And then in that first half, if we did very well, at least score 2 goals in that first half, then maybe 3 or 4 in the second half. If, you know, that 3-0 is little to what we can do. So it's because of our wingers are not active; they're not taking risk. So number 4 key point is Estevao that came into that second half and, you know, changed everything. So I think that's are the 4 important key moments we learned from that game against Wolf yesterday. Guys, let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you learned from the game yesterday. Put it in the comment section. Please don't forget to like, you know, comment 1 or 2 things, and let me know your view in the comment section. No cap.